You point at something, you don't say a word, and somehow the other person understands exactly what you mean. That's not a modern trick. That's the oldest trick you have. Long before your ancestors said a single word, they were already talking. Not with sound, with hands, with eyes, with silence that carried meaning. And the story of how that silence turned into speech is far stranger than you were ever taught in school. Picture a group of early humans, maybe 500,000 years ago, somewhere on the plains of what is now East Africa. No alphabet, no grammar, no verbs, nouns, or sentences. Just bodies, moving with intention. One of them freezes, points toward the tall grass, widens her eyes. The group stops instantly. No sound has been made, but a message has traveled from one mind to another, perfectly intact. That moment right there, that's language being born. Just not the kind you're picturing. For decades, scientists assumed speech came first. Mouths, throats, vocal cords, evolving to shape air into words. But the timeline never quite fit. The human vocal tract wasn't fully ready for complex speech until surprisingly late in our evolution. So what were early humans doing with all that time in between? How were they coordinating hunts, warning each other of danger, teaching their children to survive without a single spoken word? The answer is gesture. Psychologist Michael Corballis spent years building the case that language didn't begin in the throat. It began in the hands. He argued that early hominins communicated through mime and gesture long before vocal language took over, pointing to objects, tracing shapes in the air, acting out the movement of an animal to say, "There's food nearby," without needing a single syllable. Watch a toddler today, before they can speak in full sentences. They point, they reach, they mimic. That's not a coincidence. That's a fossil of your own species' first language, replaying itself in every human child. Think about how efficient this actually was. A gesture doesn't require breath control. It doesn't require a specific arrangement of the tongue and larynx. It only requires eyes to see it and a brain willing to interpret it. And early human brains were already wired for exactly that. Watching, copying, understanding intention from motion. Long before your ancestors could describe the world in words, they could read each other's bodies like open books. But gesture alone has a flaw. What happens in the dark? What happens when the group is scattered, out of sight, deep in dense forest where hand signals disappear into shadow? This is where things get interesting. Anthropologist Dunbar proposed a theory that reframes everything you think you know about why language exists at all. He suggested that as human groups grew larger, physical touch, the grooming behavior still used by our primate cousins to build trust and social bonds, became impossible to keep up with. You can't groom 50 people individually. There isn't enough time in the day. So instead, something remarkable happened. Vocal sound began to replace touch. A soft utterance, a rhythmic hum, a call across a distance. It did what grooming used to do. It bonded the group without a single hand ever making contact. In other words, the earliest human sounds may not have been about describing the world at all. They were about staying connected to each other. Not "there is a lion," but something closer to "I'm still here, you're still safe. We're still one group." Feel the shift there for a second. Language may not have started as information. It may have started as intimacy. And once that vocal bonding began, evolution had a reason to keep improving it. Brains that could produce and interpret more complex sounds had an advantage. Groups that could coordinate faster, warn each other sooner, teach survival skills more precisely, simply outlived groups that couldn't. Slowly, gesture and sound began to merge into something new. Not mime, not humming, something layered, something symbolic. This is where the fossil record gets genuinely eerie. Paleoanthropologist Dean Falk studied the skulls of early hominins and found something striking. The brain regions associated with language and complex motor control appear to have developed together, not separately. Your ability to speak and your ability to gesture may share the exact same neurological roots. That's why, even now, when you talk on the phone to someone who can't see you, your hands still move. You gesture into empty air, at no one, for no visual reason at all. Your brain hasn't caught up to the fact that gesture is no longer required. It's still running 500,000-year-old software. Now, here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Full spoken language, the kind with grammar, tense, and structure, likely didn't fully emerge until somewhere between 100,000 and 50,000 years ago. That means for the vast majority of human evolutionary history, your ancestors lived, hunted, raised children, mourned their dead, and passed down survival knowledge almost entirely without words as you understand them. Try to sit with that for a moment. Generation after generation, communicating complex life or death information through gesture, sound, and shared attention. No dictionaries, no stories told in sentences, just bodies and breath doing the work that language would eventually inherit. And when spoken language finally did arrive in its full form, it didn't erase what came before it. It absorbed it. Every time you raise your eyebrows to signal surprise, every time you lower your voice to sound serious, every time a parent points at a stove and says one sharp word to a toddler, you are watching gesture and sound working exactly as they did hundreds of thousands of years ago, just now wrapped inside grammar. This is why babies babble before they speak. This is why you point at a menu item in a country where you don't speak the language and somehow it still works. This is why a shared look across a room can say more than a full conversation. You're not using a broken version of language in those moments. You're using the original one, the one that came first. There's something almost humbling in that. You live inside a species that spent hundreds of thousands of years perfecting the art of understanding each other without needing a single word. Words came later as an upgrade, not a replacement. Underneath every sentence you'll speak today, that older system is still running quietly in the background, in your hands, your face, your posture, waiting to fill in whatever words can't quite reach. So the next time you're struggling to find the right thing to say, and instead you reach out, or you meet someone's eyes, or you simply go quiet in a way that somehow says everything, remember what's actually happening. You're not failing to use language. You're using the first one you ever had.